The massive space station Kepler-7 floated silently in the void between two distant stars. Its gleaming metal corridors stretched for miles in every direction, housing the most prestigious military academy in the known galaxy. For 500 years, the best and brightest from dozens of alien species had come here to learn the art of war. Today was different. Today, for the first time in the Academy's long history, humans walked these halls. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck, watching the stars through the thick, transparent metal windows. He was tall for a human, with short brown hair and steady blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. Behind him, 11 other human cadets prepared their equipment for the war games that would begin in just a few hours. The other species at the Academy had been watching the humans with great interest since their arrival 3 weeks ago. Of the alien cadets had never seen a human before. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, the highest danger rating possible. The stories they heard about human home planet made their own worlds seem like peaceful gardens. "Hey Jake, you see those blue guys over there?" Lisa Chen pointed across the prep room toward a group of tall, thin aliens with crystalline skin. "They've been staring at us for 10 minutes straight." Jake turned to look. Lisa was right. It's Centauri. Cadets were definitely watching them, whispering among themselves in their musical language. Lisa was small but tough, with black hair tied back in a practical ponytail. She had earned her place at the Academy through her work in Earth's intelligence services. "Let them stare," Ryan Brooks said with a grin. He was working on his communication equipment, his fingers moving quickly over the complex controls. "Wait until they see what we can do." Ryan was the team's communications expert. He had grown up in the ruins of old Chicago, learning to hack into systems just to survive. His easy smile hit a sharp mind that could break through almost any electronic defense. "Don't get too confident," Katie Sullivan warned from where she knelt beside a pile of mechanical parts. "We're the new kids here. Everyone wants to see us fail." Katie was their engineer, a red-haired woman from the mining colonies of Mars. She could build almost anything from spare parts, and had a reputation for making impossible repairs under pressure. Right now, she was modifying their standard equipment in ways that would probably violate a dozen Academy regulations. "Failing is not an option," Alex Rodriguez said quietly. He was checking medical supplies, making sure everything was properly organized. As their medic, he would be responsible for keeping everyone alive during the exercises. He was calm and methodical, traits that had served him well during his service in Earth's disaster response teams. Sam Foster looked up from the flight simulator where he had been practicing. "The rules say we're supposed to defend the Tertius system against 3 attacking squadrons. Standard defensive doctrine suggests we fortify the main planet and wait for them to come to us." Sam was their pilot, former atmospheric racer who had joined the military after his home city was destroyed in the water wars. He could fly anything with wings, engines, or both. His experience with high-speed combat in Earth's dangerous atmosphere made him uniquely qualified for space warfare. "Standard doctrine is boring," Jake said. "Besides, when has Earth ever done anything the standard way?" The other 6 humans in their unit were scattered around the room, each preparing in their own way. Danny Kim was cleaning his weapons with the careful attention of someone who had grown up hunting in the Korean wilderness. Maria Santos was studying maps of the Tertius system, her eyes tracking every asteroid and space lane. Tony Williams was doing push-ups in the corner, maintaining the physical fitness that had made him famous in Earth's zero-gravity sports leagues. Jennifer Bell was reviewing tactical manuals, though Jake suspected she was really looking for loopholes in the rules. She'd been a lawyer before joining the military and had a talent for finding ways around regulations. Paul Turner was meditating, preparing his mind for the stress of combat. He had learned mental discipline during his years as a rescue worker in the Australian outback. Finally, there was Chris Evans, who was quietly sharpening a knife that probably wasn't regulation issue. He had served in Earth's Special Forces and rarely spoke about his experiences. The other cadets found him slightly unsettling, which was exactly how he liked it. Commander Zexai entered the preparation room with the confidence of someone who had been running military exercises for decades. He was Altarian, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with gray skin and 4 arms. His species was known throughout the galaxy for their strategic brilliance and military discipline. "Attention, cadets," he announced in the universal language that all Academy students were required to learn. "The war games will commence in 1 standard hour. The scenario is as follows. The Tertius system has been invaded by hostile forces. The defending team will attempt to hold the system using available resources. The attacking teams will attempt to capture key strategic points within 7 standard days." He paused, looking directly at the human cadets. "This exercise has been designed to test your ability to work within established galactic military protocols. Creativity is encouraged, but remember that you are representing your species and your planet. The reputation of Earth's military depends on your performance." Jake nodded respectfully. "Understood, sir. We won't let you down." The commander studied Jake's face for a moment, as if trying to read something in the human's expression. "The attacking force consists of 3 squadrons: Vorthok warriors, hegemony tacticians, and Drakmarie shock troops. Each squadron has 40 cadets and standard military equipment. You will be defending with 12 cadets and whatever resources you can find or create in the Tertius system." Several of the human cadets exchanged glances. 12 against 120 seemed like impossible odds, even for a defensive scenario. "Sir," Lisa spoke up, "are there any restrictions on the methods we can use to defend the system?" Commander Zexhi's expression showed slight amusement. "Standard military ethics apply. No permanent harm to opposing cadets, no destruction of Academy property, and no violations of the Galactic Warfare Convention. Beyond that, you are free to use any tactics you deem appropriate." After the commander left, the preparation room fell silent. The other alien cadets were gathering their equipment and moving toward the transport ships that would take them to the exercise area. The humans remained behind, forming a circle to discuss their strategy. 12 against 120, Ryan said. "Those are interesting odds." "I've seen worse," Chris commented, still working on his knife. "The key is not to fight fair," Jake said. "They expect us to follow standard defensive procedures, set up shields, establish firing positions, wait for them to attack. So we don't do that," Katie said. "We do something else entirely." "What did you have in mind?" Sam asked. Jake smiled, and for a moment, his expression reminded the others why humans were classified as coming from a death world. "We're going to show them how Earth fights wars. No rules, no honor, no mercy, just victory." Lisa laughed. "This is going to be fun," as the human cadets gathered their equipment and headed for their transport ship. They were unaware that their conversation had been overheard. Several alien cadets reported the humans' strange confidence to their instructors, who noted it in their files but dismissed it as typical Deathworlder arrogance. The transport ship that would carry the humans to the Tertius system was small and cramped. As they strapped themselves in for the journey, Jake looked around at his team. They were young, inexperienced, facing impossible odds against opponents who had been training for galactic warfare their entire lives. He couldn't wait. To get started, the Tertius system looked peaceful from space. 3 planets orbited a yellow star, much like Earth's sun. The first planet was a barren rock covered in mining operations. The second planet held most of the civilian population in gleaming cities, connected by transport tubes. The third planet was mostly ocean, with a few island chains that served as vacation resorts. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of their transport ship as it approached the second planet. According to the exercise rules, this would be their headquarters. The attacking alien squadrons would arrive in 6 hours, giving the defenders time to prepare their positions. Standard procedure would be to set up shield generators around the major cities, Sam Foster said, reading from the tactical manual. Then establish weapons platforms at the jump points where enemy ships will arrive. "How boring," Lisa Chen replied. She was already working at a computer terminal, her fingers flying over the controls. "I've been reading the background information. For this system, do you know there are over 2 million civilians living here?" "Simulated civilians," Alex Rodriguez corrected. "The computer generates their behavior patterns?" "Right, but they still follow realistic social patterns," Lisa continued. "They have jobs, families, daily routines. They also have communication networks, transportation systems, and most importantly, they gossip." Jake turned to look at her. "What are you thinking?" Lisa smiled in a way that made the others slightly nervous. I'm thinking we don't just defend the system, we recruit it. Within 2 hours of landing, the human team had split into smaller groups and spread across all 3 planets. This violated standard military doctrine, which called for concentrated defensive positions. But Jake had made it clear that they weren't following standard anything. On the mining planet, Katie Sullivan and Danny Kim were having a very productive conversation with the automated systems that ran the excavation equipment. Katie's engineering skills, combined with Danny's experience with industrial machinery, allowed them to understand the mining operations better than their designers had intended. This plasma cutter could punch through starship armor, Katie observed, examining a machine designed for cutting through asteroid rock. And these cargo haulers have engines powerful enough to reach orbit. Danny nodded, running his hands over the controls of a massive drilling machine. My grandfather used to say that any tool can be a weapon if you use it right. Meanwhile, on the ocean planet, Sam Foster and Chris Evans were making friends with the local fishing fleet. The simulated fishermen were programmed to be helpful to military personnel, but they seemed genuinely excited to meet humans. Word had spread quickly that Earth people were different from other species. You want to borrow our boats? Asked Captain Nares, a holographic character who ran the largest fishing operation. For military exercises, we need fast, quiet vessels that can move without being detected by standard sensors, Sam explained. Your boats are designed to track fish, which means they have excellent stealth capabilities. Chris was examining one of the fishing vessels with professional interest. These hulls are built to survive ocean storms. They're tougher than most military craft. On the main planet, the rest of the human team was implementing Lisa's recruitment plan. She had established herself in the central communication hub, where all news broadcasts and public announcements originated. Within hours, she was producing what could only be called propaganda. Citizens of Tertius System. Her voice carried across all communication channels. Your peaceful home is about to be invaded by hostile forces, but you are not defenseless. You have defenders who will fight with courage and determination to protect your way of life. The simulated civilians responded exactly as real people would. They began calling friends and family members, sharing information, and organizing themselves into support groups. The computer programs that controlled their behavior patterns made them act like actual humans facing a crisis. Ryan Brooks had meanwhile accomplished something that should have been impossible. He had gained access to the enemy communication networks before the attacking squadrons had even arrived in the system. How did you manage that? Paul Turner asked, watching Ryan work at his computer station. Social engineering, Ryan replied, with a grin. I called the Academy's communication center and told them I was a system administrator running a security test. They gave me the access codes to verify that their encryption was working properly. And is it working properly? Not. Any more? Jennifer Bell was busy reading through every regulation, rule, and guideline that governed the war games. As a former lawyer, she had a talent for finding loopholes that others missed, according to Section 47 of the exercise guidelines. She announced, Defending forces are authorized to request assistance from local civilian authorities in matters of planetary security. What does that mean? Maria Santos asked. It means we can legally deputize every civilian in the system as auxiliary military personnel. Tony Williams and Paul Turner were working together to establish what they called citizen defense groups. Using the gymnasium facilities in major cities, they began teaching basic self-defense and emergency procedures to groups of simulated civilians. Remember, Tony explained to a crowd of eager holographic citizens, if you see anything suspicious, report it immediately to the defense network. Your eyes and ears are our most valuable weapons. The civilians responded with enthusiasm that surprised even the humans. They organized themselves into neighborhood watch groups, communication networks, and supply distribution centers. Within hours, the entire civilian population had transformed into an intelligence gathering system. When the first enemy scouts arrived at the edge of the system, they found something completely unexpected. Instead of standard military defensive positions, they encountered what appeared to be an entire civilization mobilized for war. The Vorthok squadron leader, Commander Thechver, studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. There are no shield generators around the planets, no weapons platforms at the jump points. Where are their defenses? His tactical officer, a young warrior named Grix, shook his head. The only military signatures we detect are small groups, scattered across all 3 planets. It makes no strategic sense. Perhaps the humans don't understand proper defensive strategy, suggested another officer. They come from a primitive world, probably don't know how to fight in space. Commander Vekfer wasn't so sure. His species had been warriors for thousands of years, and he had learned to trust his instincts when something felt wrong. Everything about this situation felt very wrong. The Hegemony Squadron was having similar problems. Their commander, strategist Velthor, was known throughout the Academy for his analytical mind and careful planning. But the sensor data from the Tertius system made no sense according to any military theory he knew. The humans appear to have abandoned all standard defensive positions, he reported to the other squadron commanders. They have spread their forces so thin that we could overwhelm any position with minimal effort. Then it should be an easy victory, replied Commander Zashek of the Drakomari shock troops. His species believed in direct, assault tactics and had little patience for complex strategies. But when the Drakomari advanced scouts tried to approach the mining planet, they encountered something none of them had expected: the asteroid mining. Equipment had been modified into weapons of incredible destructive power. Plasma cutters designed for breaking rock were now targeting their ships with deadly accuracy. How is this possible? Commander Zashek demanded, as his scouts retreated under heavy fire. Those are civilian mining tools. The situation became even more confusing when the Vorthok squadron attempted to land troops on the ocean planet. Duh! Fishing boats that should have fled at the first sign of military activity instead began coordinating complex maneuvers that made them nearly impossible to target. They're using fishing nets to jam our sensors, reported one Vorthok pilot in amazement. And those boats are faster than they should be. But the most disturbing reports came from the main planet, where the Hegemony Squadron had expected to find frightened civilians hiding in their homes. Instead, they found an entire population that seemed to be actively working against them. Every time we approach a target, the civilians warn the defenders, strategist Velthar reported. They have somehow organized the entire planetary population into an intelligence network. That's impossible, Commander Vekfer replied. Civilians don't behave that way. They panic and hide during military operations. Human civilians apparently behave differently. Lisa Chen was monitoring all enemy communications from her position in the communication center. The confusion in the alien voices was exactly what she had hoped to achieve. Jake, she called over the team communication channel. The enemy commanders are starting to panic. They don't understand what we're doing. Good, Jake replied from his position, coordinating the overall defense. Confusion is our best weapon. Keep them guessing. The first day of the exercise ended with no major battles, but the alien attackers were already showing signs of stress. They had expected to face standard military defenses and were completely unprepared for the human approach to warfare in their command centers. The 3 alien commanders held an emergency conference. Day 3 of the war games began with an emergency meeting in the Academy's observation center. Commander Zexai stood before a wall of monitors showing the Tertius system, but what he saw made no sense according to 500 years of military tradition. Explain to me, he said to his assistant, Lieutenant Mordok. 12 human cadets have not only held their assigned system, but have somehow expanded their control into 3 adjacent sectors. Lieutenant Mordok, a nervous young officer from the Centauri Republic, shuffled through his reports. Sir, they appear to have ignored the boundaries of the exercise entirely. They've established what they call forward defense positions in the Epsilon, Gamma, and Delta systems. Systems were supposed to remain neutral zones, Commander Zexai replied, his forearms gesturing in frustration. They're not even part of the exercise. The humans claim they're preventing enemy forces from using those systems as staging areas. According to their logic, the best defense is to control territory beyond your assigned borders. On the main screen, they could see Sam Foster leading a squadron of converted fishing boats through the asteroid belt of the Epsilon system. Somehow he had convinced the local mining crews to join his operations. The fishing boats now carried improvised weapons created by Katie Sullivan, turning them into a guerrilla fleet that struck enemy patrols and disappeared before they could be caught. How are fishing boats defeating military spacecraft, Commander? Zexai asked. The humans modified them with mining equipment, Lieutenant Mordock explained. They're using asteroid mining charges as torpedoes and industrial cutting beams as weapons. The fishing boats are so small and fast that our targeting systems have trouble locking onto them. In the Gamma system, Danny Kim had established what could only be described as a mobile fortress. Using heavy construction equipment, he had built weapons platforms that could be quickly moved from one location to another. Every time enemy forces located his position, he would pack up and relocate before they could mount an attack. Sir, Lieutenant Mordock continued, the Vorthok Squadron is requesting permission to withdraw from the Gamma system. They report that they cannot engage an enemy that refuses to stay in one place long enough to fight. Commander Zexai watched the tactical display with growing disbelief. Red symbols representing enemy forces were scattered across multiple systems, while blue symbols representing the human defenders seemed to be everywhere at once. Meanwhile, in the Delta system, Lisa Chen had achieved something that military theorists claimed was impossible. She had convinced the civilian population of an entire star system to actively participate in warfare. Her propaganda broadcasts had been so effective that simulated civilians were volunteering to serve as scouts, supply carriers, and intelligence gatherers. They were using civilian communication networks to coordinate military operations and civilian transportation to move military supplies. Citizens of the Delta system, her voice carried across all channels. You have the chance to be heroes. Your enemies think you are weak and helpless. Show them what free people can accomplish when they fight for their homes. The response had been overwhelming. Civilian cargo ships were carrying weapons and supplies to human defensive positions. Civilian communication networks were being used to coordinate attacks. Civilian manufacturing facilities were producing improvised military equipment. Back in the Tertius system, the situation had become even more chaotic. Tony Williams and Paul Turner had organized the civilian population into what they called the Tertius Defense Corps. Groups of simulated civilians were now conducting patrols, obtaining equipment, and even engaging in combat operations. This violates every principle of civilized warfare, declared Commander Thajivor of the Vorthok Squadron during an emergency conference with the other alien commanders. Civilians are supposed to be protected, not armed and trained for combat. The humans seem to have different ideas about the role of civilians in warfare, replied strategist Velthar of the hegemony forces. They treat every person in their territory as a potential soldier. Commander Zashek of the Drakmari was the most frustrated of all. His shock troops were designed for direct assault against fixed defensive positions, but the humans refused to establish fixed positions, instead moving constantly and striking from unexpected directions. My warriors cannot fight an enemy they cannot find, he complained. Every time we assault a position, the humans have already moved somewhere else. When we pursue them, they ambush us with weapons that should not exist. The most disturbing development was Ryan Brooks's success in electronic warfare. He had somehow gained control of the enemy communication systems and was using them to spread confusion and false information among the attacking forces. Attention Vorthok Squadron. Ryan's voice came over their own communication channel perfectly, mimicking the voice of their commander. New orders from Academy headquarters. Withdraw immediately to the Zeta system for resupply. Half of the Vorthok forces obeyed the false order before their real commander could correct the mistake. By the time they realized they had been tricked, they were hours away from the battle zone. Ryan had also begun intercepting and altering enemy messages. When the hegemony commander tried to coordinate with the Drakmari forces, his message was changed to read, Drakmari tactics are primitive and ineffective. Suggest they retreat and let real soldiers handle this operation. The result was exactly what Ryan had hoped for. The Drakmari commander became furious and refused to cooperate with the hegemony forces. The two squadrons began operating independently, making them much easier for the humans to defeat. But perhaps the most impressive achievement belonged to Alex Rodriguez, who had transformed medical operations into intelligence gathering. His Field hospitals were treating wounded enemy soldiers, but they were also extracting valuable information about enemy plans and capabilities. The medical treatment protocols require us to help wounded enemy personnel, Alex explained to Jake during one of their coordination meetings. But there's nothing in the rules that says we can't talk to them while we're providing medical care. Wounded alien cadets, grateful for the excellent medical treatment they received, often shared information about their units, their orders, and their concerns about the battle. Alex carefully recorded everything and passed the intelligence to the rest of the team. Chris Evans had taken a different approach to intelligence gathering. Using his Special Forces training, he had begun conducting what he called reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines. In reality, he was infiltrating enemy camps and gathering information through methods that were probably not covered in the Academy's rulebook. The Vorthok have established a supply depot in the asteroid belt of the Tertius system, he reported during one of his brief communications. Security is light because they assume we don't know about it. Can you do something about it? Jake asked. Already taken care of, Chris replied. Their supplies should start exploding in about 10 minutes. Jennifer Bell had found another loophole in the exercise regulations. According to the rules, defending forces were allowed to request emergency assistance from neutral parties if their civilian population was threatened. I've filed formal requests with the governments of 12 nearby systems, she announced. They're sending humanitarian aid to help with the refugee crisis. What refugee crisis? Maria Santos asked. The one that will exist as soon as our propaganda broadcasts convince people they need to evacuate to safer areas. Jennifer replied with a smile. The humanitarian aid convoys turned out to be carrying supplies that were remarkably useful for military operations. Medical supplies, communication equipment, transportation vehicles, and construction materials all arrived under the protection of neutral flags. By the end of Day 3, the attacking alien forces were in complete disarray. They had expected to face 12 human cadets defending a single star system. Instead, they found themselves fighting an entire region of space that had been mobilized for war commander. Zexai called another emergency meeting with the exercise supervisors. The situation has exceeded all parameters, he reported. The humans are not conducting a defensive operation. They are conducting a war of conquest. Sir, Lieutenant Murdoch added. We're receiving reports that civilian populations in 5 different systems are requesting human protection. They want to join what they're calling the Tertius Defense Alliance. This was supposed to be a training exercise, Commander Zexai said. How did it become a political movement? The answer came from Lisa Chen's latest broadcast, which was now being received in dozens of star systems, citizens of the galaxy. You have seen what free people can accomplish when they work together. You have seen that ordinary people can become heroes when they fight for something they believe in. The choice is yours. Remain passive observers, or join us in building a better future. The response was overwhelming. Civilian groups across multiple star systems were requesting permission to join the human defense effort. What had started as a military exercise was becoming something much larger and more dangerous. In the Academy's command center, alarms began sounding. The exercise had officially spiraled beyond all control, and no one knew how to stop it. The first surrender came at dawn on Day 4. Commander Thakvor of the Vorthok Squadron stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display that showed his forces scattered across 3 different star systems. Half of his warriors were trapped in asteroid fields, a quarter were dealing with equipment failures caused by human sabotage, and the rest were chasing phantom signals that led nowhere. Sir, his tactical officer reported, we have lost contact with our supply depot. Our scouts report that it no longer exists. Do you mean it no longer exists? Commander Thakvor asked. The entire asteroid where we stored our supplies has been reduced to small pieces, sir. Our engineers believe the humans somehow turned our own mining charges against us. Commander Thakvor closed his eyes and tried to remember his training. The Vorthok were proud warriors with a 1,000-year tradition of honorable combat. They fought according to ancient codes that emphasized courage, strength, and fair play. But these humans seemed to follow no codes at all. Sir, another officer interrupted, we're receiving a communication from the human forces. Put it through. Lisa Chen's voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect Vorthok military language. Greetings, Commander Thekfer. This is Lisa Chen of the Tertius Defense Force. We understand that your warriors are experiencing supply difficulties. We would be happy to provide food, water, and medical assistance to any of your people who need help. The offer was delivered with such politeness that it took several seconds for Commander. We're offering humanitarian aid to their enemies. This is irregular, he said to his tactical officer. Sir, our warriors have been without proper food for 18 hours. The supply situation is becoming critical. Commander Vekfer considered his options. His proud warriors were hungry, tired, and completely outmaneuvered by an enemy that refused. To fight fairly, humans had somehow made it impossible for his forces to operate effectively while offering to help with their basic needs. Tactical officer, he said finally, prepare a message to Academy headquarters. Tell them that the Vorthok squadron formally surrenders to human forces. Cite reasons as unconventional warfare beyond acceptable parameters. Sir, are you certain? In our entire military history, no Vorthok unit has ever surrendered to a numerically inferior force. In our entire military history, we have never faced an enemy like this, Commander That replied. They have turned warfare into something we do not recognize. The news of the Vorthok surrender spread quickly through the remaining alien forces. Within 2 hours, strategist Velther of the Hegemony Squadron called an emergency meeting with his senior officers. The situation has become untenable, he announced. Our forces are scattered, our communications are compromised, and our supply lines have been completely disrupted. The humans have somehow convinced civilian populations in 7 star systems to actively support their operations. Surely we can adapt our tactics, suggested one of his officers. To what? Velthor replied. Every time we develop a counter-strategy, the humans change their approach entirely. They appear to treat warfare as a creative exercise rather than a military science. The truth was even worse than Velthar realized. Ryan Brooks had been monitoring hegemony communications for days, learning their tactical language and command procedures. When Velthar tried to issue new orders to his scattered forces, Ryan intercepted the messages and replaced them with instructions that sent the hegemony units on wild chases across empty space. Navigation. Set course for the Omega System. 1. Hegemony Captain ordered, following what he believed were his commander's instructions. Sir, that system is completely empty, his navigator replied. Orders are orders. The strategist must have a plan. But there was no plan, because the orders had come from a human teenager sitting in a communication center 3 star systems away. By the time the hegemony forces realized they had been tricked, they were so far from the main battle that they would need days to return Commander Zashek of the Drekmari. He was becoming increasingly frustrated with his allies. First, the Vorthok had surrendered without warning. Now the hegemony forces seemed to be wandering aimlessly through space, completely ignoring his requests for coordination. My warriors are ready to fight, he declared during a communication with the Academy Command Center, but we cannot fight an enemy that hides behind civilians and refuses to engage in honorable combat. What exactly are the humans doing? Commander Zexhai asked from his position in the Academy's observation center. They have turned war into a game, Commander Zashek replied. When we attack their positions, they retreat and then attack us. From behind, when we pursue them, they lead us into traps. When we try to establish secure areas, the civilian population reports our every movement to human forces. What Commander Zashek didn't mention was that his troops were also being affected by human psychological warfare. Lisa Chen's propaganda broadcasts had begun targeting the Drakmari forces directly, speaking to them in their own language about honor, courage, and the nobility of protecting innocent civilians. Warriors of the Drakmari, her voice carried across their communication channels, you are brave fighters with a proud tradition. But ask yourselves, what honor is there in attacking civilians who are only trying to protect their homes? What courage is required to fight people who have no military training? True warriors protect the innocent, they do not make war upon them. The message was carefully crafted to appeal to Drakomari cultural values while making them question their role in the exercise. Several Drakomari units had already requested reassignment to non-combat duties, claiming that the current operation violated their warrior code. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison and his team had taken their expansion campaign to a new level. They were no longer content to simply defend the Tertius system or even the surrounding regions. They had begun what could only be described as a liberation campaign across multiple sectors. Citizens of the Proxima system, Jake announced in a broadcast that reached 17 different star systems, "You have lived under the threat of military aggression for too long. The Tertius Defense Alliance offers you protection and the chance to join a community of free people working together for peace and prosperity." Response was immediate and overwhelming. Civilian governments in 6 different systems formally requested protection from the human forces. They were tired of being caught in the middle of military exercises and political conflicts between various alien species. Alex Rodriguez had established field hospitals in 4 different star systems, providing medical care not only to human forces and their civilian allies, but also to wounded enemy soldiers. His medical facilities had become neutral zones where representatives from different factions could meet and negotiate. "The humans are offering to treat our wounded warriors better than our own medical corps," reported one Drakmari officer. "Provide not only physical healing, but also counseling and support for combat stress." This created a serious problem for the alien commanders. Their own wounded soldiers were requesting transfer to human medical facilities, claiming that the quality of care was superior to anything available in their own forces. Katie Sullivan had meanwhile turned the industrial capacity of multiple star systems into a war production machine. Mining operations were producing raw materials, manufacturing plants were building equipment, and civilian transportation networks were moving supplies with an efficiency that amazed even the Academy's logistics experts. Sir Lieutenant Mordok reported to Commander Zex High, "The humans now have access to more resources than some planetary governments. They've essentially created their own nation-state in the middle of our training exercise." Chris Evans had taken his infiltration missions to a new level. Instead of simply gathering intelligence, he had begun recruiting enemy soldiers to switch sides. Using a combination of practical incentives and ideological arguments, he was convincing alien troops that they would be better off fighting for the human cause. The humans offer better food, better medical care, better equipment, and a chance to be part of something larger than themselves, explained one former hegemony soldier who had joined the human forces. "Why would I want to go back to following orders that make no sense?" By the afternoon of Day 4, Commander Zashek found himself in command of forces that were increasingly reluctant to continue fighting. His own warriors were questioning the purpose of the exercise and expressing admiration for human tactics. "Sir," his second-in-command reported, "3 more units have requested permission to surrender. They claim they cannot continue operating against an enemy that treats them better than their own commanders do." Commander Zashek realized that the situation had moved far beyond military tactics. The humans had somehow turned a war game into a political and social movement that was undermining the very foundations of galactic military culture. "Prepare a surrender message," he ordered. "State that Drakmari forces can no longer continue operations against an opponent that has fundamentally changed the nature of the conflict." But Jake Morrison wasn't finished yet. As reports of the second surrender reached him, he made a decision that would shock the entire galaxy. Operation Freedom's Dawn began at midnight on Day 5. Commander Zeeks High was reviewing surrender reports from 2 alien squadrons when alarms started blaring throughout the Kepler 7 Academy station. Assistant Lieutenant Mordok rushed into the command center with a look of complete panic on his face. "Sir, we have a problem," Lieutenant Mordok announced. "The humans are here." "What do you mean they're here?" Commander Zaxai demanded. "The exercise zone is 3 star systems away." "They're not in the exercise zone anymore, sir. They're outside our main docking bay requesting permission to come aboard." Commander Zexai stared at the young officer for several seconds before the full meaning of his words sank in. "The human cadets have left their assigned area and traveled to the Academy?" "Yes, sir. They claim they're conducting a diplomatic mission to negotiate the terms of peace." Through the observation windows, Commander Zexai could see a small fleet of modified civilian vessels surrounding the Academy station, fishing boats, mining ships, cargo haulers, and passenger transports had all been converted into a makeshift navy that somehow looked more impressive than most military fleets. "Sir," communication officer announced, "we're receiving a transmission." From the human forces, Jake Morrison's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, the other human cadets were busy at workstations that looked like they had been assembled from spare parts and determination. "Commander HFY," Jake said with a respectful nod. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Tertius Defense Alliance. We're here to discuss the terms of your surrender." The command center fell silent. Several officers stared at their instruments as if they might be malfunctioning. The idea that Academy cadets were demanding the surrender of the Academy itself was so impossible that many of them couldn't process it. "Captain Morrison," Commander HFY replied, trying to maintain his dignity, "you seem to be confused about the nature of this situation. This is a training facility, not a military target." "With respect, Sir," Jake continued, "your facility has been providing material support to forces conducting aggressive military operations against civilian populations in the Tertius region. Under galactic law, that makes you a legitimate military target." Jennifer Bell appeared beside Jake on the screen. "We filed formal complaints with the Galactic Council regarding the Academy's role in supporting military actions against non-combatant civilian populations. We're prepared to take this matter to the highest levels of galactic government." Commander HFY realized that the humans had somehow turned a training exercise into an international incident. They were treating the simulated civilians in the exercise as if they were real people whose rights had been violated. "Captain Morrison," he said carefully, "I think there may be some misunderstanding about the nature of the exercise. The civilian populations you refer to are computer simulations, not actual people. Are you saying that simulated people deserve fewer rights than real people?" Lisa Chen asked, joining the conversation. "That seems like a very dangerous philosophy for a military academy to promote." The question hit Commander HFY like a physical blow. In the space of a few words, the humans had transformed him from an exercise supervisor into someone who appeared to be advocating for the oppression of civilian populations. Furthermore, Ryan Brooks added, appearing on screen with a tablet full of data, "Our analysis shows that this academy has been training military officers using scenarios that consistently treat civilian populations as acceptable casualties. We believe this represents a fundamental violation of galactic warfare conventions." Commander HFY looked around his command center at officers who were supposed to be among the finest military minds in the galaxy. None of them seemed to have any idea how to respond to accusations that their training methods were somehow immoral. "Sir," Lieutenant Murdoch whispered, "what do we do? They're asking us to surrender our own facility." The answer came from an unexpected source. Sam Foster's voice crackled over the communication system. "Commander HFY. This is Sam Foster of the Tertius Defense Alliance fleet. We have taken control of your outer defense grid. Your weapon systems are offline, and your shield generators are under our control. We strongly recommend that you consider Captain Morrison's proposal." "How is that possible?" Commander HFY demanded. Katie Sullivan appeared on the screen with a cheerful smile. "Your defense systems use the same basic technology as mining equipment. Once we figured that out, it was pretty easy to modify them. Ryan helped by convincing your computer systems that we were authorized maintenance personnel. We also have support from your own students," Alex Rodriguez added. "Many of the alien cadets have requested medical treatment for stress-related conditions caused by what they describe as impossible tactical situations. They're asking to be transferred to our medical facilities for proper care." Commander HFY realized that the situation had moved far beyond anything he could handle. The humans had somehow convinced his own students that they needed protection from their own academy. "Captain Morrison," he said finally, "what exactly are your terms?" Jake's expression became serious. "We want formal recognition that the training methods used by this academy are harmful to the mental health and moral development of military officers. We want new guidelines established for military exercises that protect the rights of all participants, including simulated civilian populations. and we want to guarantee that future training will emphasize the protection of innocent people rather than treating them as acceptable casualties. In other words, Paul Turner added, we want you to start training military officers who actually care about the people they're supposed to protect. The demands were so reasonable that Commander Zexai couldn't find any grounds to refuse them. The humans weren't asking for money, territory, or power. They were asking for military training that emphasized protecting civilians rather than ignoring them. Sir, Lieutenant Murdoch said quietly, incoming message from Galactic Command. They want to know why we're under siege by our own students, Commander. Zexai closed his eyes and tried to imagine explaining this situation to his superiors. 12 human cadets had not only defeated 3 full squadrons in a training exercise, but had also captured the Academy itself, and were now demanding reforms. To Galactic Military Education. Open a channel to all stations, he ordered. Yes, sir. Commander Zexai straightened his uniform and looked directly into the camera. This is Commander Zexai of the Galactic Military Academy. I hereby formally surrender this facility to the Tertius Defense Alliance, pending negotiations for Academy reform and new training protocols. The silence that followed was broken by cheering from human civilians across multiple star systems. Lisa Chen's propaganda broadcasts had been so effective that millions of simulated people genuinely believed they had been liberated from oppression. 3 hours later, Commander Zexai found himself sitting across a conference table from 12 human cadets who were somehow conducting peace negotiations with the confidence of experienced diplomats. The new training protocols will emphasize protection of civilian populations as the primary military objective, Yennefer Bell explained, reading from a document that was already more comprehensive than most galactic treaties. All future exercises will include ethical evaluation components, Maria Santos added. Military officers will be graded not only on their tactical success, but also on their treatment of non-combatant populations. We'll also establish exchange programs, Tony Williams suggested. Human military officers will train alongside alien officers to promote understanding and cooperation. Commander Zexai signed the agreement because he couldn't think of any reason not to. Everything the humans were proposing would actually improve military training and produce better officers. One question, he said as the signing ceremony concluded. How did you know that our defense systems could be modified using mining equipment techniques? Katie Sullivan grinned. We didn't. Just figured that if something was built by people, it could probably be taken apart by people. Most of what we did was just creative problem solving. And the psychological warfare? He asked Lisa Chen. Just talk to people like they were real people with real concerns, she replied. It turns out that even simulated civilians respond well to being treated with respect and honesty. What about the electronic warfare that disabled our communication systems? Ryan Brooks looked slightly embarrassed. I called your help desk and told them I was a system administrator running a security test. They gave me all the access codes I needed to verify that your systems were working properly. Commander Zexai realized that the humans hadn't used any advanced technology or secret weapons. They had simply approached warfare with a completely different mindset than any other species in the galaxy. 6 months later, the incident had become known throughout the galaxy as the day humans broke. War games. The new training protocols established by the peace agreement were being implemented at military academies. Cross-known Space Commander Zexai, now serving as director of the reformed academy curriculum, often watched recordings of the human tactics. He had come to understand that humans didn't just fight wars differently. They thought about conflict itself in ways that other species had never considered.